Welcome to Perspective. I'm your host Sana Makpool, and in today's show we will be looking at the investigation that has been published by EU Disinfolab that has revealed the Indian agenda to malign Pakistan internationally, and that has targeted the UN and also the EU. We know that in this investigation it has come to light that a dead professor and numerous NGOs and defunct organizations, along with a large number of fake media outlets, have been used by India to malign Pakistan internationally. They have targeted different media campaigns. They have made sure that they impersonate different media outlets such as the EU Observer, and they have also posted fake addresses, fake numbers, lots of things that have been done which violate the international institutions, and that has been done just for one agenda, and that is to malign Pakistan internationally. A similar report was also released last year by Disinfolab, and it revealed a partial reality of what was going on behind this campaign that is being run for about 15 years now. And after that, in 2020, this report has been released that goes to show, and this is in the words of the executive director of the EU Disinfolab, that it is the largest network that they have ever exposed. So it is something that should be shaking the ground internationally. Whether or not it does so, we're going to discuss further in our show today, because we know that after last year's report, we have not seen any sort of international consequences that maybe were justified in light of the report. But now that we know that a much larger investigation has been conducted, and we know that this is a vast network that has been going on for many, many years now, perhaps we can question whether or not it is time that the international community will respond or take notice. To talk further about this campaign and what is the next step, we have been joined in the studio for now by foreign affairs expert and a professor, Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jasbal. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. And we've also been joined on Skype by defense analyst, AVM retired, Mr. Ikramullah Bhatti. Thank you, sir, for being with us. And we've also been joined by a member of the British Parliament from the Labour Party, Mr. Afzal Khan. Thank you, Mr. Afzal Khan, for being with us today. I'll start with you, Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jasbal. Considering the fact that Pakistan earlier this year has also presented a dossier to the UN, we have been talking about the Indian agenda to malign Pakistan since a long time, since Pakistan has been there. And we have now been providing irrefutable evidence to the international community that this is what's going on. And now the evidence has not come from the Pakistani side. It has come from an independent observer to this thing. It has come from the EU Disinfolab, and they have revealed such a vast network that has been going on. However, like I said, a partial report was also there last year, but everybody seemed to have forgotten that. And now we see this one. Do you think that this report will also be forgotten like the rest?
I think that this time, the timing of this, you can say, report, which we call it EU Disinformation Unearthing report, and then in the follow-up, this what you call it Asian Network International Agency, something like that, which was operating from India, Chronicles. The timing is very critical. There are two reasons. If you see, first is that first time government of Pakistan very systematically moved when they moved this dossier to the United Nations and highlighting all these kind of the things with facts and figure. If you see, prior to that, the government of Pakistan was talking a lot about these things, but there was no systematic move. Naturally, when these kind of agencies or the NGOs, but this time, if you see that, as you very rightly pointed out, partially it was, you can say, unearthed last year, but at that time it did not catch much media attention internationally. But today, if you see in the last 1 week, since we have been seeing that this unearthing of, or this enlisting of 750 NGO, and the most important thing is that they were using the dead professor name, who died way back in 2006.
Yes.
These kind of facts were earlier not available, but today they are available. And at the same time, this is a time in the 20th century, 2020, that people are now started realizing that what is disinformation by, you can say, social media, you can say these kind of the channels, and people, even for example, as a part of being a member of the academic community, we always ask our students that when you are doing a research and on the website, you try to take it and also mention assessed at which time, at which on which date. The basic reason was that there was a realization among the academics that there could be a fake news or temporary flashing something and then moving out. But now I think it will be going to establish a new, you can say, norms for the research, and at the same time, it is going to strengthen in Pakistan, and especially the people of Pakistan must know. But still, I'm worried whether we will be educated enough or not.
Right.
That anything which is published in the international media, A, B, which is coming up on your, you can say, Twitter or these things, you have to test it. Maybe 90% is fake, erroneously presented, or the emphasis on the issues which they are presenting, that is not correct. So in that context, you see it from 2005 till 2020, 15 years, in a 1.5 decade, India successfully run this. And as a result, Pakistan suffered a lot. If you see United Nations reports, recently America's report, which came on with reference to what you call it terrorism or the minority issues, minorities have been suffering in India, and in that report they are referring Pakistan as a concerned state. Why that is because the report makers, or you can say, they are gathering the data from this kind of the website, these kind of the news agencies, this kind of information, and now it depends on us. For example, on our media, our electronic, print, private, government media, and our academia, all walks of life, that we can build, that we will build systematically some argument and try to expose as much as possible. So with this exposure, I think India is on the receiving end, and you have to also take into account, if you, we use the word, this what we call it trauma theory. In the case of India, BJP has used this trauma theory so much and so much that in a way that now Hindus in India, even who are the secular or who are very, you can say, enlightened, they start thinking, oh, in the last few centuries, they were suffering, their community was suffering, and as a result, they started targeting Babri Mosque, and then they started targeting other issues, and as a result, they mustered a lot of support. And
Right.
this recent unearthing of this Asia network, you can say, that was also revealing the same kind of the thing.
Right.
So if you see within India, if you go today, the India, if you ask, you would find the entire Hindu community seems having an apprehension towards Pakistan. Why? Normally, this, even in our state, look, we say India is a Indian government or India's policies are anti-Pakistan, but we are not always targeting Indian public or community,
Right,
but now
and
they are targeting this way.
Absolutely. And we have seen that this is something that has been done with a lot of sophistication, and there's a lot of drive behind it. It's been going on for so long.
Exactly.
Of course, this is a network that has been existing for a while now, and the framework has been designed in such a way that this is happening. And you're right, fake news is a phenomenon that is widely discussed now, and we all need to be more critical of what we believe. But then again, it has been influencing even the UN and members of EU.
Of Parliament, Congress.
So whether or not the general public is able to dissect that clearly, will come towards that a bit more. My question to Mr. AVM retired Ikramullah Bhatti is that, considering the fact that since last year also, and before that, especially with the PTI government making sure, for example, that the Kashmir issue is highlighted, or that Indian atrocities and human rights violations are highlighted, and a lot of other things, Pakistan has been trying to make sure that the narrative is heard, and they are trying to adopt various different strategies as well to make sure that now this is actually reaching out to the people as part of the international community. And we have seen a response which has been a little different from what we've seen in the past. A lot of the discussions have been picked up by the UN, by the EU Parliament. A lot of media outlets are talking about it, like Mr. Jaspal Saab was saying. But at the end of the day, do you think that all of this just springs up when something like that happens and the media outlets highlight this, but then it dies down and nothing really actually happens in terms of consequences? India has been abusing human rights, India has been violating international norms, and this report has revealed that it's been doing so for so long and has made such huge violations. But really, is the world going to show some consequences? I mean, even the managing director, Gary, says if it was China, Russia, we would have seen a different response. Do you agree?
Pakistan has taken it up with the United Nations. It has taken it up with the European Parliament. And I think when you look at the report, Pakistan is, of course, a directly aggrieved party. But at the same time, when we see that United Nations institution, HCR, UNHCR, and the EU Parliament have been exploited, so they should also be agreed parties. And while they may, in their own on their own, do feel and do realize this, but the fact is that Pakistan, being the most concerned party, has already highlighted that. But the onus will lie on Pakistan to do it in a manner that the UN does carry out an investigation against those 10 NGOs who have been exploiting their position with the UN, and at the same time, the EU Parliament has to look at it, and it will be, I think, the onus will lie on the Pakistan's Foreign Office to continue to pursue and ensure that the a logical end is reached both at the UN and at the EU, so that all those 10 NGOs are blacklisted. And of course, as far as the EU Parliament is concerned, they must make sure that whatever media houses, the NGOs or the think tanks, they are all taken care of. They're disbanded or disallowed or blacklisted, and so that this operation ceases. And of course, while the report has not been able to point out the Indian government specifically behind the entire project, but the fact remains that ANI is almost a beneficiary or related or connected to the Indian government. So that does give them a link. But while these institutions like UNO or the EU Parliament may not be able to pursue or take any direct action against the Indian government, but as long as they're able to take care of the NGOs, the think tanks, and the media houses, I think this operation will cease, and it will lose its sting. And at the same time, I think the position of Pakistan will be vindicated. The narrative that Pakistan has been able to build for the last couple of years will be upheld. And I think the impression that the Indians were able to create the world over about Pakistan having a hand in terrorism across the border will be taken care of. And this is an excellent opportunity that Pakistan has got. While the Indian Foreign Office has tried to trash the report and also give a viewpoint
Of
that
course.
probably this info lab is a property of Pakistan and that they have taken it out on behalf of Pakistan and it has nothing
Right.
to do with reality. But I think it's an independent entity, and the world will be able to see through it, the Indian response, and accept it at the value that it has.
Right, and you rightly pointed out the fact that even if we do leave the Indian government out of it, there are a lot of other organizations and other stakeholders that can be taken action against. So there's a lot that the international community can still do, even if you're taking the Indian government out of it. Mr. Afzal Khan, my question to you is, considering the fact that, like Mr. Ikramullah Bhatti was speaking about, the fact that the UN and the EU are also aggrieved party to this, they've also been exploited, or their names have been used by this whole network and the setup against Pakistan. So at the end of the day, don't you think that this is also something that raises a question that people at the UN or at the European Parliament should be more wary of the activities of maybe this Srivastava group, considering the report was released last year in the aftermath of that, or the fact that there is so much fake news already going on and then we have these reports coming out? Should they not be more responsible in terms of their actions and activities and who they affiliate themselves with?
I think you ask a very good question. At the heart of this, what we've got to understand is that this whole setup was deliberately used in order to promote India and to malign or anti-Pakistan. Now, promoting India is not an issue. Promoting Pakistan is not an issue. I think once you start engaging this whole process through fake information, through lies, and then through deceives, that's when the issue actually then comes up. And then for them to influence not only the UN or the EU, I think the first question we have to ask is actually how extensive is this? Is it just limited to these two institutions that we're talking about, or is it much wider? Because we've seen within this report
116
that
countries were involved, so it has to be.
that's right. That's right. But are they using these techniques to influence things in other countries as well? For example, in America, for example, in Britain. So I think that needs to be examined, and it's in the interest of these countries themselves. What is not acceptable for Britain, I'm a British parliamentarian, for me, for another country to use wrongly misinformation, disinformation to cause difficulties between two parties. Let's say in this case, we have a good relationship with India, but we also have a good relationship with Pakistan. So what we can't accept is one country using wrong information deliberately to harm a relationship of Britain with, let's say, Pakistan or with any other country. I think that is not acceptable. And that, I think today I have written a letter to our Foreign Secretary to ask him this precise question, that is he aware of this report and what has he done to look into this to make sure that actually this same sort of format is not being duplicated and used in other countries, and that particularly for us is Britain.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Afzal Khan. This is a very valid point that you've raised, the fact that this is not about taking either Pakistan or India's side. This is about an international violation. This is about something that the international community holds high, the norms and values and the laws that we've made to make sure that we're held accountable, to make sure that the news is credible. And that is something that the countries can speak up against, especially when it may even impact them. My question now would be to Mr. Amir Lateef, who's just joined us on phone call. Mr. Amir, the fact that considering that this is something that the international community needs to take notice of, not just because this is impacting Pakistan, but that it is also impacting them, and it questions India's credibility as a whole. All of the people who are representatives of India, of media outlets that are owned by Indian groups, are then coming into this entire play of this network, and we can be questionable about their authenticity. And when that happens, don't you think that India as a whole, as a country, and its credibility in the international community is also under question?
Absolutely. First of all, India has conceded a huge blow by this report, and this report has, completely destroyed India's credibility as so-called a world's largest democracy and as a responsible state. And you see, adding to my two colleagues what they have said, it is not only the breach of international laws, but it has also put the credibility of India at stake. India's spokesperson for the Ministry of External Affairs, 2 days ago, he simply rejected this report. But you see, the mere rejection cannot absolve India from the responsibility from this responsibility, because it's the Indian news agencies, it's the Indian company which are involved, which are behind this racket. And this racket was not against EU. This racket was not against China. This racket was not against US. This racket was purely against Pakistan and the freedom struggle of Kashmiris. So one does not have to be genius to figure out a genuine connection between the Indian intelligence agencies and this network. And if not, if the Indian Foreign Ministry spokesperson is within his right to reject this report, but then on the second thought, he should say that the Indian government is going to initiate an inquiry against the ANI and the Srivastava Group and the other NGOs which have been behind this network, because this network has not only disseminated fake news against Pakistan and Kashmiris, but it has destroyed the credibility of New Delhi. So New Delhi has equally been affected by this report. And mind you, this report has not been issued by Pakistan, and as a journalist, I am not satisfied with the rejection of this report by the Indian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, because on the one hand, he rejected this report, and on the other hand, he heaped the blame on Pakistan for issuance of this report. So I do not understand if this report has been issued by Islamabad or by Pakistan's foreign ministry or by an independent European Union organization. So the foreign ministry spokesperson should know the fact that the liability laws are very, very strong in Europe and in the West. So if this report is biased, this report is wrong, incorrect, and devoid of truth, then the network that has issued this report, it should have been sued. Or if not, then India should announce initiating an inquiry against ANI, because being a journalist, I am appalled that one of the largest Indian news agencies.
As you should be, Mr. Amir, stay with us online, as you should be, and of course, as the entire community internationally should be, they should be taking this into account. And the fact is that Mr. Amir talked about the rejection that the Indian government is talking about in light of this report, that was expected that they'd do that. But the fact remains that even though the EU Disinfo has stayed away from pointing fingers at the Indian government or the intelligence agencies. They said we need further investigation to make sure that we establish that link. Even if it may seem apparent, or even if there is a large network, it does not mean that at the end of the day that is what is going on. But if we were to believe that, and if we were to say that the rejection stands true, then of course there must be some sort of action that the Indian government should be taking in light of this. Why would they not be stepping up when somebody's putting a blame on them, and then actually making sure that whatever is happening in the ANI or whatever is happening with the SG is not something that the EU Disinfo is talking about? But there seems to be no responsible action from their side.
I think the responsibility lies with the India, because all these agencies, networks, they are based, or their origin is in Delhi or some in the Indian cities, especially when you call it this ANI, that is also in India. Srivastava Group is also in India, and it is the responsibility of the Indian Information Ministry as well as the External Affairs Ministry that why any you can say think tank or any news agency have been using their space illegally. If the Indian government wants to present itself in front of the world that they are not involved, then they have to take a actionable, you can say visible, tangible kind of a thing against these agencies or these things. But it's not possible. It's everyone knows. Even the EU member of the parliament, the American Congress members, or all the opinion makers in the world, they understand that without the support of a government, an NGO or any media house alone cannot establish its network in 116 countries.
Right.
With having a 770 plus, you can say, linkages, and a website 500. So naturally, Indian government.
And the fact that this has had such a muted reaction also goes to show that this is clearly the job of
this is
as
important.
well.
This is an important debate in the international politics today. That I don't know about the European, because this report came from the Brussels. Within the Europe, still there is a realization that we have to protect and also, you can say, propagate the values of the media, values of human rights, and in the Europe, my understanding is that they were not expecting from any democratic society or a democratically elected government that it is sponsoring or indirectly or directly supporting this kind of the fake news agencies.
So you're saying they're shocked?
A member of the House of Commons rightly pointed out that projecting one's own government, promoting one's own government, or what you call it, soft power, developing capabilities of one's own government, that makes a sense. But using these kind of things or fake news to malign the other country, and not only maligning Pakistan alone, the problem where they have to investigate, and that's why I'm very much optimistic that definitely the EU or the United Nations or these kind of the forum, human rights organization in the Europe or in the rest of the world will be taking seriously the finding of this, you can say, fake news agencies. The reason is that they have been misled many times. Since last 15 years, United Nations research, you can say EU Parliament, because in the report you see the linkages with the EU parliamentary members, because they were just throwing the you can say information there with a lot of fake, with a lot of references. For example, if somebody can say X, Y, Z, who is very established name or an organization, they reported this. So naturally, a member of the parliament who is preparing his speech for tomorrow or going to vote in the United Nations against Pakistan or in favor of Pakistan, that will going to deviate him from the reality. Second is that if we say with this kind of the things, you are building a narrative. Now here is the question. The question is why they are not coming up clearly on India, because India is a big economic market. Today, Indo-US strategic partnership, EU, frankly speaking, though the public has a different, but the European nations within the NATO, they were different. So my understanding is that now the big question is that is the strategic interest or the military interest of the nations are going to kick out these all the values which are dealing with or what they are projecting.
But that has been been going on in the past. We have seen that those interests always.
But this time
are
this was unasked
supreme.
not by us.
Right.
Look, everyone was saying, as you pointed out in the beginning very clearly, Pakistani dossier. So maybe that was prepared by us.
Right.
Nobody was taking it seriously,
Right. This is
except it,
not.
but we presented it.
Right.
But what is this?
Right. But the reaction still remains to be seen whether or not it's going to be at par with what's going on.
I think
if
reaction
this
is
that
not as
huge-
much.
Yeah,
serious.
if this is that huge, that unexpected, then maybe we should be seeing an unexpected reaction towards this as well. My question to you, Mr. AVM Retired Ramullah Bhatti Saab, is that considering the fact that when we're talking about the Indian side's response to this report that has been released, of course we were expecting the rejection, but like Mr. Amir was talking about, that again they are maligning Pakistan and they're talking about the fact that Pakistan is the one that has a lot to hide, and they've referenced Osama bin Laden in the country. They've also talked about the Mumbai attacks, and they've said that this is Pakistan who's actually not very authentic in terms of the news that it goes to show to the international community. When we see this sort of a stance coming from the Indian side, do you think that Pakistan has done enough to stand its ground to reveal it to the international community that it is a responsible state, that it is not a state that violates the international norms and institutions, that it holds strategic importance, and it knows what it means to be a responsible democracy? In light of what India has been doing and what Pakistan's actions have been in terms of its relations with other countries and its foreign policies, which one do you think holds more ground in the eyes of the international community, despite all things?
Yadav. Then we have TPP's role in Pakistan, and then of course we have seen the role of Pakistan in bringing the Taliban to the negotiating table with the US, and the world has seen this. The world has acknowledged this, and I think the world is now increasingly realizing that whatever Pakistan was saying for the last couple of years was correct, and that these reports, the one that came out last year and this one, have vindicated Pakistan's position and upheld its narrative. And it's only now up to Pakistan that, we are pitched against India, which is economically very much a point of focus and interest for Europe and America. And they have strategic and even military interests with India. So that is why we find that there is no immediate a strong notice or reaction from the UN or from EU. But of course, it is such a outrageous, report that it just cannot be ignored, and the onus will lie on Pakistan to continue to maintain this pressure, maintain its interest, and continue to pursue it with both UN and EU, that they take some action, take notice, and prosecute those NGOs and those fake media houses. And I think that is how we are going to succeed. Otherwise, we already you've seen the fate of the last report which came out about the 265 websites that over the period of time the world just lost interest. But in this case, we find that there are many more stakeholders. EU is there and UNHCR is there. So if Pakistan can maintain the momentum and continue to focus, I think the two institutions will not be able to ignore this, and they will definitely take some action, which will, of course, at least neutralize these efforts that this Srivastava group has been initiating or continuing for the last 15 years. So I think onus will lie on us, because we are, as I said earlier, the most aggrieved party.
We're the ones who have been suffering the most, and we're the ones who have been talking about this time and again. So it is up to us to reiterate it and make sure that this this particular report is also not buried under the sand, and we know that this makes a different impact than the last one, hopefully. Mr. Afzal Khan, the fact that earlier when we spoke about the MEPs and their activities, and a lot of them, when they've been questioned by the journalists and by the EU Disinfolab, have not really responded or commented, or they have talked about how they have not written op-eds for the different NGOs that apparently were accredited by the UN. What would you say about what needs to be done regarding the activities of the MEPs and their involvement with a lot of these NGOs that were calling out to them and reaching out to them? And secondly, when we're looking at the fact that a lot of these things are happening in light of fake news and propaganda campaigns that have been going on for a while now, how are we to ensure the fact that at least people who are sitting on top positions are part of the UN or part of the parliament are actually dissecting the kind of information that reaches to them? Are they doing that?
I think, look, I've been a member of European Parliament and I'm currently a member of Parliament in Britain. So I've served in both houses in that context. And I remember when I was a member of European Parliament, I did have some concern. And if I'm quite frank and honest with you, but I thought it was simply good lobbying on part of the India. I did not appreciate to the extent what has been discovered. And I think if you then step back and look at this whole thing, I think what this has shown is, in a sense, they've blown a huge hole into the democratic system which operates both in the European Parliament and, for that context, in most European countries. Because what this report shows is that you've been able to bring about almost fake think tanks, NGOs, parliamentary groups have been set up, and then fake and dubious sort of online media has been also been used. And the whole, this gamut has been interacted together in trying to hit the target. So that, I think, is pretty serious. And that's why I'm saying they have blown a huge hole into the very system, how the Western democracy operates. And therefore, I cannot see how actually they can ignore it. The fact that they may not have been reacting very quickly does not mean they will ignore it. I think they will have to look at this deeper. And what do they have to do? I mean, I think for a start, my point was they actually need to understand the full extent this has been operating. What this report has shown may not be the full picture. It may just be the tip. And there may be a huge iceberg underneath. So that needs to be examined. I think we also need to think about how do we clean up some of these NGOs, some of these think tanks about parliamentary groups which are fake like that. How we cannot allow that to carry on. And then similarly, you know, what sort of sanctioning that needs to be done as well needs to be looked at, whether that is on the individual or the organization. So I think there are a lot of questions there which have come out of this report which need to be examined. And I'm confident already a number of MEPs are asking the question from the Commission to examine this further within the European Parliament. But similarly, like I said today, I've written a letter to the Foreign Secretary exactly asking him what has he done and what examination is being carried out now in Britain to make sure that this sort of setup is not operating. So I don't think this is gone. Indian government can totally ignore this or they can do what they like. But I think there is a fundamental question now, and that has to be answered by the Western democratic systems.
So, Mr. Afzal Khan, you think that now the members of the European Parliament, at least, would be more wary of these activities or such activities coming in from the Indian side? Are you hopeful for that?
Well, from anywhere. Look, already they were questioning things, what was happening from the Russian context. Yeah. They were already questioning things on the China side. I think with what has happened here, they will also be now looking closely with what is happening from the Indian side as well. And that, I think, is healthy, because what we do not want to see is our democratic system to be undermined in such a terrible way. It's just not acceptable.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Amir, considering the fact that all of this is dependent on making sure that you establish fake news, fake propaganda impersonate media outlets or people that don't exist anymore, such as the dead professor. There's so many things that are dependent for this network to work on, based on people's ability to not be sure of what is right or what is wrong or what is true and what is false, and not being able to critically analyze the kind of information that we see. As a journalist, how do you think that this entire phenomenon of fake news and propaganda that is so prevalent in the world, and now we know on such a large scale, to interfere with international politics or malign a particular country or have such a huge agenda, how much do you think that this can be controlled, and how?
When I read this report first time, so at that time I laughed at the audacity and the stupidity of the designers of this campaign, who used dead people, dead NGOs, and the dead think tanks, and now this network is dead. So
but the stupidity seemed to work. Maybe then the people who were at the receiving end were also stupid.
And absolutely, you know what? When they actually forgotten the fact that this is the 21st century and the world is taking these things very seriously now. This fake news issue is not only it's related to this network, but if you see even Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, they all are removing fake news. They all are taking action against fake news because it has become a matter of serious conflicts. It has become a matter of serious kind of diplomatic, kind of disagreements between the two countries, because the people, if they trust that this think tank, which is, and you know that the report has clearly mentioned that this network was actually being used to pressurize, to influence the international NGOs and even the United Nations human rights groups and the European Union vis-a-vis decision making. So if the fake news is disseminated to an extent whereby it can affect the decision making, this is very, very dangerous phenomena. So the designers of this campaign, they just forgot the fact that the world is not sleeping anymore on this issue. They are taking very seriously, and let me assure you, this issue, if Pakistan has raised a few issues during the last 1 or 2 years, and the last month when Pakistan issued a dossier, and you know, when the Indian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, he was rejecting that report, and at the same time, he also discussed about the Pakistan's dossier. That means they are feeling the heat of that dossier. And Pakistan, so it was very interesting for me as a journalist. I could not digest that why he is blaming Pakistan, why he is bringing the issues of Osama bin Laden and that dossier and the Mumbai attacks, because there was nothing like that mentioned. The report did not say that this report has been, the report did not carry such any issues against Pakistan or anything. It's just purely about the disinformation campaign, and the spokesperson should have spoken only about this campaign. But because he had no answer to that report, so that is why he was. So in the dossier, he should remember that the Pakistan has an irrefutable and living evidence against them, and that evidence is Commander Kulbhushan Jadhav. This living evidence has given Pakistan edge on several international forums, and I think, and this report is connected with this Kulbhushan Jadhav network and the Pakistan's association with Kashmir. So Pakistan should unite this issue with these two issues, and whenever Pakistan raise Kulbhushan Jadhav and this, so Pakistan's this living evidence of Kulbhushan Jadhav, this is a trump card for Pakistan, which Pakistan must use at any.
Right, and this brings me to the fact that Mr. Jaspal, you were talking about earlier, that the timing is right, and this has just piled over the dossier that we've earlier released. Do you think that this particular investigation that has come out from the EU Disinfo Lab helps amplify the value of the dossier, or make sure that our reach now to the audience, or how much they're going to take this seriously, the dossier and India's involvement in terrorist activities within Pakistan, how much of that is going to benefit or be amplified because of this investigation? Do you think that is so?
I can respond this in a one-liner. I say yes, it amplified, but the reason is how we are going to use it.
Right, of course.
Because there is a need. Look, in this entire report, what it was it revealed in this report that they were propagating, and in the what we call it in the war with psychological warfare, we normally say propaganda and rumors are ready-made opinions for unthinking hearts. And in that context, if you are seeing that they were churning out this wrong information, people were thinking that, oh, India is a sufferer, Pakistanis are brutal, blah, blah, and we ended up in a grey list again. Now, if we can present this report, link it with our earlier dossier, we can use this report information to justify, or you can say amplify whatever we presented in those dossiers. But you have to continuously narrate it, continuously present it. Pakistan has also to learn it, that how they were using the fake think tanks, fake, you can say, website for articulating their disinformation. So we can now articulate with the, you can say, original, with the facts and everything this. I think that this report, if the government use, or not only the government definitely using this report in support of it, their earlier argument, Prime Minister very rightly pointed out last week that it, you can say, certify what we were, Pakistan was always, you can say, presenting. But now, here is also responsibility of all these sections of the society of Pakistan, I mean, especially the media of Pakistan. How the media is picking this report and analyzing, as our journalist colleague has very rightly pointed out, that if we can now elaborate, and like Yadev is there, and we can project that, and with this report, if we can project it, that whatever the Indian government through these things were feeding, that human rights violation or what we call false flag, XYZ, I think that kind of information, if we can continuously articulate and make the people to aware. Otherwise, look, what is happening? In the modern world, when the things flash in the media, next day it's no more there. New things comes.
Absolutely.
And in this in the era of the artificial intelligence, you can make the fake news, or even you can convert the original news in a fake, or fake news in the original correct news. So that these are the things Pakistan has to continue to work on.
Absolutely. It's a fast world that we're living in. We have to make sure that we take the right steps. As you said, timing is important, and taking the right steps is also important. Making sure that the kind of narrative that we want to put forward is the one that reaches the audience. And like, of course, we know from this investigation that it takes someone to point out what is going on, to establish that this is fake, that this is something that is being done without credibility or authenticity. So it is, of course, at the end of the day, Pakistan's responsibility, because we're the ones who are suffering the most because of this, to make sure that this investigation is not buried under the sand, that the dossier is also not buried under the sand, that the international community listens to us. We'll keep knocking until it does. Thank you very much to all of our guests who have joined us on Skype as well. AVM retired Ikramullah Bhatti Saab, thank you very much for being with us. Journalist Amir Latif, and of course a member of the British Parliament, Mr. Afzal Khan, and Mr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal for being with us in the studios. That is it for this conversation. Thanks a lot for watching the show. It's goodbye.